If you want to learn how to play Tsukuyomi, you've come to the right place. In today's video, I am going to be going over everything you need to know about the god of the moon. What is going on? I'm KittenOfDoom and welcome to another video. If this is your first time here and you want to learn how to play Smite, learn about certain gods, as well as some tips and tricks, then stay tuned. If you find this video helpful and want to see more like it, make sure to subscribe down below so you don't miss anything. I also live stream on Twitch, and if you want to check it out, it is linked below. In this guide, we will be going over Tsukuyomi's abilities, combos, builds, counters, and general tips and tricks. Smite classifies Tsukuyomi as a Japanese assassin, with an average difficulty. Some pros about Tsukuyomi is that he excels at fighting at a distance with some high poke damage. He has high utility, high single target damage, has great chasing potential, and great zoning potential with his Caltrops ability. And as for cons of Tsukuyomi, he can be locked down very easily, has no movement ability besides his ultimate, which can get him in a bad position, which in turn makes him have low mobility. He has no escape options, and he is highly susceptible to crowd control. And now heading into jungle practice, we are going to be going over Tsukuyomi's abilities. Tsukuyomi's passive is called Shingetsu and Mangetsu. Tsukuyomi wields Shingetsu in his left hand and Mangetsu in his right hand. When these weapons damage an enemy, they become empowered. Empowered Shingetsu grants a 50% cleave and restores mana. Empowered Mangetsu deals bonus damage and restores health. So it's always a good idea to interweave auto attacks in between your abilities so that you can get the benefit of his passive. Tsukuyomi's first ability is called Dark Moon Shuriken. And in this ability, Tsukuyomi calls upon Shingetsu, summoning forth a Dark Moon Shuriken. The Shuriken damages enemies and stops on gods, sticking into them. If Tsukuyomi gets close to the god, he retrieves the Shuriken and reduces its cooldown. After casting this ability, Shingetsu's next basic attack becomes ranged. This attack steals movement speed from the enemy hit. This ability is basically Tsukuyomi's bread and butter. You want to always use this to poke down enemies, to wave clear, and it is important to go up to an enemy to steal the shuriken back so it reduces the cooldown so you can poke them even more. But late game, this ability does a ton of damage and it is a super fun ability to use. It's also important to use this ability when you're trying to chase down enemies because when you hit it, it also slows them so you can catch up to them since you steal their movement speed from them. Tsukuyomi's second ability is called Kusarigama. Shingetsu and Mangetsu form themselves into a Kusarigama. Tsukuyomi swings the weapon to his left and right, damaging and disarming enemies hit. He then swings the weapon forward with more force, stunning enemies hit. While channeling, Tsukuyomi gains 33% movement speed and is immune to knockback effects. An important note about this ability is that you can use it as an escape tool as well. If someone is behind you, you can swing and turn your camera around and stun them while you escape. And this ability is where most of Tsukuyomi's utility comes from. The disarm and stun is super useful in team fighting, in boxing, and targeting someone out of a fight. It does insane damage, has really good clear, and is probably his best ability. Tsukuyomi's third ability is called Silver Moon Caltrops. Tsukuyomi holds Mangetsu aloft as it erupts into starlight, sending stars falling to the ground. As they land, they become Caltrops, damaging enemies in the area and slowing them for 2.5 seconds. Enemies who move inside the Caltrop field take damage and are slowed again. After casting this ability, Mangetsu's next basic attack becomes ranged. This attack deals bonus true damage. This ability can be pretty fun to use because you can cut off enemy pathing with this so they have to go and fight you, or they will be too scared enough and go through the Caltrops anyway, and this ability can rack up tons of damage if they run through it. So I usually always like placing it right when I want to go in on somebody and then they have to either go around my Caltrops or come back out of it where I can damage them even more. Tsukuyomi's ultimate ability is called Piercing Moonlight. Tsukuyomi channels the power of the full moon, gaining crowd control immunity and 50% damage reduction. He fires forward 4 powerful piercing beams of moonlight. Enemies hit, take damage, and become marked. Each beam can hit up to 3 enemy gods. After firing all beams, Tsukuyomi charges forward at light speed, dashing through all enemies in the order they were hit, dealing heavy damage. Tsukuyomi will end his dashing at the final enemy hit. I would say this ultimate ability is definitely one of the funnest to use in the game. This can be Tsukuyomi's best and worst ability, just depending on the situation. Only because if you ult into the whole team and you don't have follow-up, the enemy team can just collapse onto you and you can die pretty easily. But I like using this ability, especially when a lot of their team is half health, so I can clean up kills that are going to get away. Also, a super important note about Tsukuyomi's ultimate is that once he hits a god with the beams, he can actually follow them wherever they are. So if anyone's jumping, just like in that clip with Fenrir, he can still hit Fenrir through his jump. He can hit Nuwa in her ultimate all the way up in the sky. He will follow Athena if she ults across the map. You basically can't get away from his ultimate unless you just Aegis the damage. He's still going to teleport to you. So just be mindful of that when going up against gods that have global ultimates and long jumps like that. Alright, and now it's time for Tsukuyomi's combos. He can have like a lot of different ones. It kind of just depends on your preference, really. His main one would be to use his one to slow them, to go up to them to get his shuriken back for the cooldown, fire off that second ranged attack, and then throw down his caltrops on them so that they are slowed and are trying to get out of that situation to get away from you, and then using caltrops as a ranged attack to hit them again. So going over that again, you'd use this one and throwing down the 3 like this. Another one you could do is, if you're in front of someone, use his second ability while they're stunned, then place your caltrops, use that, and nail them with some auto attacks. And one with the ultimate, if it's just on a single target. Use your ultimate, nail them down with his 2, put down the 3, and then use his 1. And that is all the damage he can really do in a short period of time. You can also intermix a lot of these, like using his ultimate, and when you get to someone, use the 1, the 2, and then the 3. It's all really up to your preference. I think all of his abilities can synergize really well no matter what combo you do, but those are pretty much the main combos. And then of course, if you are trying to get away from somebody and they're chasing after you, you can stun them and get out of there. A lot of the times, if you do end up using these combos and get them low enough, then feel free to ult them after that to finish that off. And with that first combo I showed you, if you just do the 1 and the 3, it's not gonna get them totally down, so then you can follow up with your 2 to get that final kill. And with that second combo, with just following up with the stun, hitting the caltrops, and then hitting the 1, putting it into the ultimate. You actually won't even need any of his other abilities, but yeah, his abilities are super fun. You can always interchange them just depending on the situation, and he just does tons of damage and is super fun to play. Now as for some counters to Tsukuyomi, of course his biggest relic counter is Aegis. If anyone Aegises, you're not going to do any damage to them, you will only just teleport. So if anyone is low in Aegises, then that can be a counter to Tsukuyomi. Another relic counter, especially if supports are trying to save their team, would be Shell. If you are ulting to one of their lower targeted allies and they pop Shell, then you will just be slashing through the shield and not their health. So that can be another good counter to Tsukuyomi. And lastly, Horrific Emblem. Since Tsukuyomi has low mobility already, with this on him, it just slows him even more. And so that can be pretty detrimental to him as well. He can use his ultimate to get that effect off of him, but like we said before, it could put him into some bad situations if he isn't careful with it. As for some top gods that are counters to Tsukuyomi, for Guardians, I would definitely think Kumbhakara Karna is a pretty big counter and threat to him just because of Kumba's Mesmerize, Root, and Knockup. Basically, if Tsukuyomi gets near Kumba, he can just mez him and you were just sitting there for a while. So Kumba can definitely ruin your day if you are playing Tsukuyomi. And biggest tip I would say is just try and distance yourself as far as you can from a Kumba and maybe try and only go in after you see him use his mez. Another one that can lock you down is Nox. If she hits you in her silence and her 1 with her combo, you are just gonna be sitting there, aren't able to get out of it, and then her team can follow up and kill you, so just watch out for Nox players. And as for assassins, Thanatos can be a pretty good threat to him since Thanatos has a really good early game and strong ability damage with his scythe and his silence, and he has more movement speed than you. Just keep a good eye out for Thana, and obviously his execute can be a pretty big threat as well. Another good mage that counters Tsukuyomi is just because if Tsukuyomi ults to her, then she can just put down her big circle of protection, and once you're done dashing, you are just going to be right next to her and she can just pop her ultimate and it will cause a ton of damage. She can just follow up with the rest of her abilities on you. And another guardian to keep in mind is Geb, just because his stone shield can really negate the damage of Tsukuyomi's ultimate when dashing to certain enemies. And when you dash to a Geb, he can also use his Cataclysm ultimate to stun you, so just beware of Geb as well. Alright, and now for Tsukuyomi's builds. I would definitely first in Conquest, if you're playing that, always recommend Assassin's Blessing. It gives you some good health and more damage to jungle monsters, and you also gain health and mana when killing a jungle monster. So that is definitely important to pick up if you are in the jungle. And of course, for any other game mode, to do a little bit more early, pick up Attacker's Blessing. This can be pretty beneficial in the early game. As for boots, I would pretty much recommend Warrior Tabby most of the time. It just has that good physical power, mana, and movement speed. This is generally for more ability focused assassins. And of course, if you want to be a little extra speedy, you can always pick up Talaria boots, just your preference, but I definitely prefer Warrior Tabby. And as for the Conquest start, I would always recommend kind of just doing Assassin's Blessing and then getting Mace, a T1 Mace, and then probably either a multi-potion, health potion, and then Hand of the Gods for some extra jungle clear, or you can just get some more pots if you'd want that. And once you have gotten your boots, feel free to get your second item online, and this really depends on the team comp. If the enemy team has any self-healing or healers on the team, always pick up Brawler's Beat Stick. If they don't and you're not worried about healing, I would recommend Crusher. It really synergizes well with a lot of his abilities, just because enemies hit by your damaging abilities take an additional 20% damage plus 15% of your physical power over 2 seconds. So this will give you a lot of extra damage on all of your abilities. And it also gives 20% attack speed, and it kind of synergizes well with Tsukuyomi's passive and his ranged basic attacks. Another really good item on him is Soul Eater. It provides a lot of physical lifesteal, physical penetration, and 10% cooldown, all stats that really benefit Tsukuyomi. And since he has a little bit lower sustain, every time you hit an ability you will gain a little bit of health. And if you hit your 1 on like a minion wave, this will really help you out and give you some extra health. And so I would recommend getting that a little bit soon so that you can stack this up to get that evolved effect. Next up, I would recommend Hydra's Lament, just because it's a fantastic item because of the amount of synergy, again, with his kit, both with his first and third ability with the ranged basic, which benefits from Hydra's passive. If you are looking to do Tsukuyomi in the solo lane, I would probably not recommend picking this up, just mostly in the jungle. And again, this provides some more cooldown reduction, which is fantastic, so that he can have his abilities up even longer. Another item that I think is really core on Tsukuyomi that I really like a lot is Erendite. It provides some power, cooldown, and it gives him bonus movement speed, which is really great for quickly getting out of a fight after using his ultimate if he is in a bad situation, or after using his ultimate to quickly catch up to an enemy god. I would definitely recommend picking this up just because of all the stats and the great passive. And for Tsukuyomi's last item, it really can depend on what your preference is. He can have a lot of different items that can work really great for him. One I would recommend is Serrated Edge, because it provides basic attack power and lifesteal for every non-ultimate ability on cooldown. And this synergizes really well with Hydra's just because it makes his basic attacks more powerful. And Serrated Edge along with Soul Eater provides really good penetration as well as lifesteal. Another item I really like to use on him is Heartseeker. Gives him a ton of power, some more pen, and of course mana, which is always nice. And for this, your abilities deal an additional 3% of the target's maximum health as physical damage. And if you have a lot of physical power, your ability bonus damage scales up, and it can reach a max of 6%, and subsequent hits on the same target do 75% bonus damage for the next 30 seconds. So you can see here, we definitely have over 200 physical power, so it is going to be doing that max of 6%. Tons of physical power. You got some attack speed in there, cooldown, and a little bit of ability lifesteal with Soul Eater. I have really liked this build a lot, and of course if you do not like Crusher, you could always swap that out for Brawlers or even Titan's Bane late game, just because your abilities cast deal 20% physical pen. So a great item for him since he is a really good ability assassin. And if you're looking to play Tsukuyomi in the solo lane, I would recommend definitely getting some more tankier items. Some I would recommend is the Sledge, because it provides some good power and a lot of health, and provides some magical and physical protection. The Sledge also has crowd control reduction, which is a really good stat just because it alleviates some of Tsukuyomi's weakness to crowd control. Another option for solo lane is Void Shield, just because it has a little bit of offense and defense built into it, and you have an aura around you where enemy gods within 55 units of you have their physical protection reduced. And you probably wouldn't want Crusher in a solo lane build, so I still think you could get away with Brawlers or Titan's Bane. Or you could throw in one of these magical hybrid items like Runic or Ansile, just to have that extra magical protection with some physical power, just to make you a little bit of a bruiser. And that is going to be it for the Tsukuyomi guide. I really hope that this helped you out and that you've learned how to play Tsukuyomi a little bit better. And if this has helped you, I would totally appreciate if you would leave a subscribe and like, and let me know if you want to see any other specific gods. And I will see you all in my next video.